Welcome back to another episode of the Brawn Body Podcast. This season is proudly brought to you by Isophit. Today I'm joined by Ebenezer Samuel, or Eb Samuel, and Eb and I are going to be discussing his backstory and journey in through fitness today. We talk about his earlier influences from his family. We talk about his time in college and career and how he got to where he is today. And we share so many amazing lessons along the way. And we tie in some different superhero analogies and so many great things into what I found to be a great conversation. I certainly learned a lot from Eb. I think very highly of him. And I have drawn a lot of benefit from the men's health magazines and the men's health brand myself, especially early on in my fitness journey. And I highly recommend you check them out because they're doing great things in this space. Enjoy. Eb, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to work with you today. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I know we had some fits and starts finally making this happen. So I'm just excited that we finally got to make it happen.
For sure, for sure. For people who might not be familiar with you or, maybe they haven't heard of the Men's Health magazine. I feel like everyone's heard of it by now, but would you mind filling them in a little bit about who you are and all the amazing work that you do?
It's crazy because I do think I always felt like 95% of the people knew who Men's Health was, or what Men's Health magazine was. And then I remember I think I was speaking at a friend's college class. And so that's like 17, 18-year-olds who live on TikTok, right? And I was like, have you guys heard of Men's Health magazine? And I got a couple more quizzical looks than I was expecting. So so I'll give you the rundown very quickly on the magazine and then myself. But Men's Health magazine, Men's Health brand, obviously we're not just a magazine anymore. We're website, YouTube, all the things. We focus very much on kind of fitness, health, and vitality for men, right? Our big thing, is kind of like faster, stronger, better. We want to get you in better shape physically, right? But then also help you mentally, help you with your nutrition, help you with your style, all that kind of stuff. We're trying to be, and I think we are, like the authority in kind of fitness and wellness. I specifically head up the fitness section of everything we do. So that includes, all the video we do. I'm in a lot of the video that we do. I kind of direct what we put into the magazine and onto the website, and basically guide the fitness to make sure that it is stealthily very useful to people, or it is openly very useful to people. But there's a lot of stealth things under the hood where we're trying to protect guys from themselves, not get everybody to max out their bench press every single day, but still get them to all their goals. And that's my main job at Men's Health, is just overseeing the fitness. And also trying to, I would say, almost like be like a light for fitness. There's a lot of kind of, confusing fitness, controversial fitness, especially on social media. People saying, there's just, you've seen it probably 8 million times. And what I'm trying to do, both personally and professionally, is, give people very useful, actionable tips in fitness, kind of cut through some of the noise. And give them exercises that they can use, and also show them how to have fun too, right? Because I think 95% of the population got sick of push-ups and sit-ups and squats when they were in 6th grade gym class and they had to do too many of them, right? And so I think my job is to help excite people about fitness by showing them things other than push-ups and sit-ups and squats. Get them moving through still the movement patterns that we need them to move to, so that they can live long lives and be super productive with those lives. And be physically strong and feel great as they're doing it, but do it without boring them and making them do 100 push-ups every morning, because the reality is not every single person has time to do that or needs to do that.
I think it's so funny you brought up the rep max bench every day, because that's kind of what I did this morning and last week. So I'm guilty of that. And you're right. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy with those things. And I love what you're doing with Men's Health and just kind of the whole mission of the group in general. It's funny because when I was growing up and getting into fitness, I subscribed to the magazine, and I've still got a majority of the magazines, because that was kind of my early into, the health and fitness world, was, doing some of the different workouts, trying some of the different exercises. And I certainly agree that you guys are the authority, and that you guys are doing a phenomenal job of putting out great content, helpful content to get people into the health and fitness space. I'll say that I don't think every workout that you guys post is going to take someone from like couch to like world-class athlete overnight. But I think that what you do is such a great way to get people into fitness, throwing a lot of different things at them and keeping them interested and entertained. And I think that's something that America as a whole needs more of. You know, you look at some of the different health statistics we see and health related problems we see right now. And I think a lot of them could be prevented by getting people engaged in regular exercise and activity, getting them to eat a little bit better, getting them a little bit more healthy from a social standpoint. And it seems like you guys definitely do a great job of covering all of those things.
Yeah, I think the key word you said there, and you repeated, I think 2 or 3 times, was a little bit, right? We just all have to get a little bit better. That's kind of where you start. I remember when I actually got to the magazine, my idea or my philosophy going in, because all I'm trying to do in my personal training and in how I train myself is I want to be like the closest thing to Superman and Spider-Man and Batman as possible, right? Um, which means I go really hard. But that's not also, I think that's what I initially thought I would just put into the magazine. Let's go hard. Let's, but like every single workout, you're trying to push yourself and all that stuff, right? Because that's how I train myself. But I think what I've gradually learned is the way I train myself is not what works or what is most useful to everybody else. And what I think we need to do as a population, both just as a population and also as trainers trying to help that population, is simplify a little bit and just get everybody moving, because that's where it starts, right? And once you're moving, a little bit, once you start to, get all that blood flow, feel all those endorphins, um, then it's like maybe you want more, maybe you want to start to push it. But so I think what we try to do with the magazine again is just excite people, and help people get started, help people get that first little bit. Like that's what we're trying to do. And that's what everybody in training to some extent should be trying to do. It's like, let's get everybody moving just a little bit more.
Definitely opening the door and making fitness a bit more inclusive for everyone. I love that mission. And from what I remember of our past conversations, it sounds like that's something that kind of hits a little bit personal back home for you too. Is that correct?
Definitely. Because I'm definitely, in my family, I obviously I go hard in the gym. But that's not how it is for everybody else. I definitely learned a lot from my dad, right? So my dad he will turn 80 in 2024. So later, he will turn 80 in July, and he had polio when he was very young. And so he was born in Malaysia in 80. So that gives you an idea. I guess I can't do the math, but yeah, I really can't do the math. But um, he had it in Malaysia where he grew up, and they did not have, the vaccine at the time, or he didn't have access to it. So it very much ravaged his legs. Like I've never played catch with my dad. I have never gone for a run with my dad. I have never played a game of one-on-one basketball with him, because he can't use his legs. He's had braces his whole life. And I think one of the things I learned from him is just, you have to, you find ways to move. And he does a really good job of that, even, as old as he is now. But you find ways to move, right? It doesn't have to be the max out on the bench press. It doesn't have to be like, a pull up record, right? What he does that still blows my mind, because he still wants to stay active right now. So he lives in Pennsylvania. And he basically drives every single day to a Dick's Sporting Goods store, and he'll walk around there with the cart, because his legs still don't work, and he uses crutches, and he uses crutches now, but that's not super practical all the time. So he'll get a cart and he'll balance himself on the cart, and he will walk around for an hour, right? So I think everybody's going to get it done a little bit differently, in terms of everybody's going to get their movement done a little bit differently, but everybody, there's always a way for us to move, and it's so productive for our bodies to just find a little bit of time and ways to move every single day.
Yeah, I completely echo that point, and I love the tie-in on the personal story there. And your dad is someone who I think we should all kind of look at as a very positive influence on the health and fitness community, right? He's an example of someone who's finding a way and not an excuse. He's not letting what's happened to him define him. Instead, he's kind of blazing a new trail forward. And while some people might listen to that and they might think, well, I don't really want to go to, a store and push a shopping cart for an hour. There's plenty of other ways that you can get active and fit and keep moving around. And it's not really, you mentioned earlier about the whole online world and some of the online trends. It's not really a space where I feel like anyone has any ground to stand on to critique someone, because fitness looks a little bit different for everyone. In general, I think the more we can get people up and moving, to your point, the better we're all going to be.
Exactly. Yeah. I think, and now, like you said, there's so many more options, like, I think what changed, and I think it's changed, it was starting to change a little bit before the pandemic, and then the pandemic helped to kind of finish it off. But, if you go back to, I remember being, growing up, going to college and stuff like that. It's like, 2003, 2004, 2005, right? Um, and the gym then was kind of this unapproachable thing, all like, dumbbells and barbells and really jacked people. And if you thought like you were going there, and if you're going there, you're a high performance athlete, or you're pushing to be that, right? A lot of grunting, um, but I think what changed, or what has changed and opened the door for more people, is is kind of, it feels more accessible. There's a lot more tech to it, right? I'm not a huge fan personally of a lot of the tech that's in fitness, right? I don't need it for myself, right? But I also understand what's one of the great things with tech is when you give like a guy, especially like guys, those are our toys, right? When you give us like a screen that has like a whole bunch of readouts on it, suddenly there's something to be excited about, right? And I think what's happened is that that like tech entering fitness has made it more fun and accessible for certain people. And I think all of these things, from tonal, if you're familiar with that, to Peloton, to the Hydro, connected rower, all of these things kind of have an audience and a purpose, and they open, they excite different people and get them into fitness in different ways. So it may not be for you, right? Like you said, nobody really has ground to criticize anything, whether it's like a kettlebell flow or whether it is the max out on the bench press, right? But whatever gets you kind of excited to move, my job as a trainer and as the fitness director of Men's Health is to use that to make you do kind of all the very basic things that I need you to do to move better and really feel better. And I can do it, or if I'm a good trainer, if I'm any good at my job at all, I'll be able to get you to do that using whatever tools you have that excite you.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. How did you get into the fitness space yourself, Eb? What brought you into the gym in the first place?
For me, the gym was, I remember being, God, I gotta think about this. I think I was like 14 or 15. This was the dark ages for me, right? But I wanted to learn how to do a push-up, right? I was kind of a very, I think there are two pieces to this, and I'll try to get through it in a coherent manner. But I was 14 or 15, very kind of skinny kid, definitely late bloomer in terms of growing into my body. And I just wanted to learn how to do a push up. I had gone to gymnastics classes when I was younger, done some of that stuff, but the push up was something that just for my body and the way I moved did not come together very well. Um, so I remember kind of being at home, and my dad gave me some book from like 1970, that had a bunch of, it's crazy because it had a lot of the exercises we still do today, rows, lateral raises, burpees, right? All of that was in there. I'm not a big fan of the burpee overall. I didn't understand it in the book. I still think it's a little bit of an overrated move today, but I mean, it's crazy just how little fitness has changed in terms of how we move, right? But I remember I started reading that book and trying to figure out, how I could do a push up. Eventually, I kind of stumbled onto, the kneeling push up. Started doing a whole bunch of stuff, and then eventually, by the time I was like, I think a junior in high school, one, I understood how to do a push up, and two, like I was kind of caught by this bug. Right, there was this thing about the gym that or this thing about fitness, right? About training, right? Where when I went down to try to figure out how to do a push up every single day and I committed to that, I gradually got better at it. I was able to go from kneeling push ups to, you know, push ups where I was kneeling and I had something on my back, right? And then eventually I was able to do a full push up, you know? And I think I like the fact that I was always able to, if I put in the work, I was able to make progress. Um, and it was very tangible progress. I did 10 reps today. The next day I did 11, or I felt like an 11th was coming, right? So I think I really appreciated that, and that got me kind of started, right? And then as I kind of grew up and got more into it, I think I fell in love. I have always been the kind of kid who loves superheroes, right? And I feel like to some extent I've spent most of my life trying to be a superhero or trying to figure out how, except jumping off buildings is generally not a great idea, right? Um, so I think what I did is I grew up and I started trying to figure out what do I want to do with my life, and what do I want to be, right? I think I saw two different paths. One is when you think of our real life superheroes, they're either, the military, right? Like, going over and kind of saving lives, right? Or they're athletes who do these amazing things. You talk about like Odell Beckham making that one-handed catch like his second year in the league, or Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or any of those guys like flying through the air, right? Um, so those are kind of, I think, the two realms that I saw, and either one of those, right? Definitely for if you want to play a sport, you've got to spend some time in the gym. So I think I dove in when I was in college. I was actually running track by then. But I dove into a lot of like the science of fitness, trying to understand how I can get more out of my body, because in my mind, to some extent, the things I'm able to do in the gym, the feats, right? Those great moments where I do max out on the bench press or pull off a wild exercise or something like that, those are, probably as close to, the physicality of being a superhero as I'm going to get. Right. So I think that's kind of what got me started. And it's kind of kept me, those same ideas, I think, propel me still today.
Yeah, I love that. I love everything you brought up there, Eb. And to your point, I think fitness is one of the last, if not the last thing that we have that teaches us the importance of delayed gratification. As you mentioned, you
Mm.
put in the work and you saw improvement consistently day after day after day, and things that you at one point could not do became attainable and then became easy. And then you could continue to grow and scale up from there. And in a world like today where everything is available instantly to us, that concept seems to be lost for a lot of people. So I certainly think there's so much value in the concept of buying into fitness, putting in work consistently over time, and getting results from it. And it can be difficult when those results sometimes take a month or 2 months or 3 months to come about, but it is a great feeling once you finally get there. And to that point as well, it's not always easy. You mentioned that you like superheroes growing up, and you still do. I don't think there's been a superhero movie or a
Hmm.
superhero, comic that I've seen where there's not some kind of setback. There's always some kind of challenge or obstacle that's get put in the way. And sometimes, if that's your fitness journey, it might be you plateau. It might be that, hey, you get sick and you miss a week or two of training, or something happens and things don't go according to plan. But again, in the movies, they never go according to plan, but they still come out on top at the end of the day. So kind of buying into the concept that it's okay that things don't always work out picture perfect. You're still going to get there as long as you trust the process and stay the course.
Yeah, I think the other piece of that too, and it's crazy because I was thinking about the same thing as you were talking about superhero movies. It is like it's the hero's journey, right? You have to start from ground zero. And it's funny, I was actually watching Blue Beetle yesterday, and I was also rewatching Iron Man because I watched way too much superhero stuff and I had way too much time on my hand yesterday. Um, but I before he's Iron Man, I'm sorry to go down the superhero nerd rabbit hole with you for 10 seconds, but when you actually watch that first movie, they spend about a half hour with him just like learning to fly and learning how to like shoot his blasters and all that kind of stuff, right? Because it is kind of a learning process. I think it goes beyond that too. It's like obviously we're there for some level for the physical, right? But I think one of the underrated things about the gym is what it teaches you about the mental and what you're capable of. Because to some extent, right, anytime we're supposed to challenge ourselves in the gym, right? If you can do 10 reps and you're coasting, you probably can go heavier, right? And especially once we kind of get that, it's like, okay, I don't know if I can deadlift this, right? And I think this goes across the board. For me, it's like, I don't know if I can deadlift 500 pounds, right? But I'm going to try it. I may fail, right? Or I may get it. And then in those instances where I get it, right? I've kind of taught myself like whatever doubts I might have, you know, about this exercise or this movement, I'm capable of more than my doubts, right? My doubts don't have to, I can beat my doubts, right? That goes for the newbie too, right? If you walk into the gym and let's say you're training with me and I'm going to start you on like a kettlebell deadlift and you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can move that, right? But then you move it because we learn how, I teach you a couple technique things or something like that, and then you move it and you have done something that you did not think you could do, right? And I think there's a lot of carryover to life, from that, because every single time we go into the gym and we meet those goals and we do those things that we did not think we could do, we are reinforcing in our minds that we're capable of doing more than we might have thought, right? And that can come into play, that little reminder that I was able to bench press 10 pounds more than I actually thought I could. I'm capable of more, right? That little reminder can spur us, when we have that presentation that we're not really sure how to give at work, right? Or when we get elevated to a new position, like a new promotion, and we're not sure if we can do that, or we have 6 employees under us instead of 3, and we're not sure if we can do it. Well, we've proven to ourselves, the more we're in the gym, at least we've proven to ourselves over and over and over, right, that we are capable of doing more than we might think. And I think there's a lot of usefulness to that, for us beyond the physical too.
Yeah, I completely agree. You are voluntarily every single day you work out choosing to do something difficult. You're choosing the harder road every day. It's easy to sit on the couch. It's easy to not do anything. It's a lot harder to get up at, 5 or 6 in the morning or whenever it is and go to the gym and put in a 40, 50, 60-minute, however long workout. It's difficult. And to your point on the mental side of it, people definitely feel more confident, or at least I do, after I get done with my workout. Mentally, I feel like part of my day is a check when I get up and hit the morning workout. I just feel a little bit more alive, a little bit more energetic. And, regardless of what the rest of the day holds, I know that I've gotten something beneficial and something valuable from my day already. And taking that a step further to your point on the mental side, just the other day, I was deadlifting with a friend of mine, and he's more in the powerlifting strongman world, and I'm very new to that world. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I'm learning. And I'm always open to learn new things. Well, we're going to go for a deadlift max, and he looked at me and he goes, since you're trying to get into this world a little bit, we're going to go official and use the powerlifting collars. So he took the ones on the end of the bar off, put those on. Then I hit my lift. And then he just starts laughing. He goes, "You do realize those collars weigh 6 pounds each." So we added 12 pounds to the bar. And I ended up lifting 10 pounds or 12 pounds heavier than I thought it was going to be. So I had it in my mind mentally, it was going to be a 425-pound lift, and it ended up being 436 or whatever it was. So I think, to your point, we are physically stronger than we mentally believe ourselves to be. I think mentally, sometimes we build up this kind of roadblock or hurdle in our mind that we can't do things. Or maybe we tried it in the past and we failed, and failure is what stood, and we never went back to it or tried it again. But I think that physically, we certainly have the ability to do amazing things, every single one of us. It's just a matter of using fitness as a tool or avenue to explore those things instead of exploit them.
Exactly. And it's interesting because it's just one of the things when you're talking about your max bench press, I think I'm thinking about too, is one of the things I do when I work with clients, or if I work with close friends and we're trying to do something like that, because I actually have a couple of people who they love to max their deadlifts with me, right? And we'll put weight on and they'll try to start counting it, right? Or they'll be like, how much is on the bar? And I'll say, don't worry about it, right? Like just go lift it, and then afterwards they'll find out like, that they topped their previous max by like 15 pounds, because sometimes the number gets in our head. And one of the cool things, the more and more you're in the gym, the more you realize that, if you don't think about the numbers, I don't like to know how much I'm bench pressing on my final set. It's like I kind of always know because, like I can count. But at the same time, it's the last thing I want to think about. Because I think sometimes, yeah, the number gets in our head. We build things up too often, and that just psychs us out. And so the gym is this really cool place where you can kind of deal with whatever might be holding you back. And you're dealing with it obviously in terms of whatever lift you're doing or whatever exercise you're doing, but you can translate that so well just into the real world.
Definitely. How has fitness kind of translated to you from a personal life and career standpoint? I mean, it certainly seems like fitness has become your kind of, your lifestyle, for lack of a better way to put it, your career.
Yeah, it was not always that way. And I think there are two reasons for that. One is because coming up for me where I lived, right? Obviously in New York City and being with Men's Health, you can make a very good living doing fitness. I was born in New Jersey and grew up in kind of the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. I tell people, do you know where Allentown is?
Oh yeah, I'm from middle of nowhere, PA as well.
Awesome. Do you know where? So I tell people Allentown, but I'm not really from Allentown. I'm from like 30 minutes. I don't know, one of the directions to Allentown. Do you know where a small town called Broadheadsville is?
I believe so.
Okay. See, it's getting more doubtful. But that's kind of where I grew up. We had one gym. This was the first gym I ever got a membership to. My mom was like, I don't know what you're doing, why you're gonna, burn $50 a month there. Although I did live there once I got it pretty much. But I didn't like, that's the kind of town where, nobody's really interested in training, right? Or in personal training. So you don't think you can have a career in that, right? So I didn't, so I went to school. I'm also Asian, right? So my parents were like, you're gonna go get yourself an accounting degree. So I went to school for accounting, right? That was my undergrad. I really loved fitness though. Like I think I skipped, I mean, I did the bad college student thing, and mostly skipped class to train on the track team and go work out in the gym and go play basketball all day. So it was kind of always part of my DNA. Again, after that whole my push-up adventures in high school. But coming out of college, I think I realized, I still don't, I can't really do accounting. Like, I mean, I can if I have to, but it's not bringing me any joy. And the whole sitting down and trying to stare at numbers all day thing is just going to drive me insane. So I actually took a couple months off, worked construction. Um, my I actually had a theory. There was a reason I was working construction. And my theory was, because I'm going to lift really, really heavy things when I work construction. So it'll make me more jacked, right? So I worked construction for like 6 months. Um, it's also like really, really hard work, and respect to anybody who can do it. But I think I realized about like 3 or 4 months in that I didn't want to spend every single day. So we built concrete foundations, the company I was with, and I didn't really, really want every single day of my life to come home and have to wash, concrete out of my clothes, right? So then I went back to school for journalism at Syracuse. They had a 1 year intensive journalism program, and I think the reason, again, always loved athletes, right? I think they have, they kind of have that superhero piece to them in terms of what the feats they can perform. Um, Kind of wanted to be one. A little on the undersized side to play in the NBA. Um, but I think what I was thinking in going to Syracuse for their 1 year journalism program was somehow if I can go from here to ESPN, the magazine at the time, or Sports Illustrated, right? Then I can kind of write about the athletes. And in writing about the athletes, I'm going to learn how they train, and I'm going to start understanding all of that and be able to implement that into my own training or maybe into training somebody else, right? So I got out of that 1 year intensive journalism program, got very, very lucky in that I got an internship to the New York Daily News from there. And I wound up spending probably like six or so years at the New York Daily News. Um, covering sports, doing exactly what I wanted to do, right? Being around NBA players. I wound up I did a Super Bowl. I did 3 Super Bowls actually. Covered 2 Super Bowls. Um, got to be around NFL athletes. I wound up covering the Giants. I made really good friends with a lot of the Giants players. And I did the work I was supposed to do, but in addition to making sure that I wrote my story on, why Eli Manning threw 2 interceptions on Sunday, right? I would also very quietly go up to Eli Manning and I would be like, what are the exercises you're doing for your shoulders, right? To keep them healthy. And I started to learn a lot about that, right? And I think that's where, like, I started to feel, one of my favorite stories I wrote at the New York Daily News, and I did a lot of work that I'm proud of. But one of my favorite stories at the New York Daily News was I wrote a story on, there was a year that the Giants literally had like 9 guys go down with torn ACLs, which is not something that really jumps out in like a useful way to any of the other sports journalists I was working with. But to me, I was like, there's something there. There's something in the training these guys are doing that is not optimal, right? Um, so I looked into it and wound up doing like a 1,500 word story on, a couple of things that the Giants might not have been doing very well in their training, right? So it's one of the stories I'm proudest of and it's one of the stories that I showed off when I believe in 2017 now, 2016 or 2017, Men's Health had an opening for a fitness editor at the time. Um, and I applied for that position. Kind of wasn't sure I would get it because I definitely had a passion for fitness, but I was missing, and I had actually I had some fitness study from college as well for my undergrad. Um, but I wasn't sure if I would get it. But they kind of liked what they saw. They took a chance on me. It helped that my interview for Men's Health with the editor in chief at the time was a CrossFit workout because I'm kind of good at those things. But we had a good discussion after that. They hired me, and that kind of set me on the path where I am now.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Eb, that you covered so many amazing things there. And just to kind of recap a little bit, it sounds like you started down a career path that, you felt obligated to pursue, but it wasn't really for you. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. I see a lot of, patients in the clinic, high school, college age, that just constantly waffle back and forth about what they should be doing with their life. Maybe someone has expectations for them and they want something different, or maybe they're just flat out unsure. And that's okay. Not everyone knows exactly what they want to do from day one. And not every path looks the same to get to where you are today. Sometimes it's a little bit of a roller coaster up and down, and life is not always a marathon of ups. And it sounds like you kind of always had in the back of your mind that you were going to end up in fitness somehow or some way. And you didn't really know how you were going to get there, but you were going to get there. And it seems like everything kind of worked together to get you there, or at least that's how you perceive it. And I think that's something that's so valuable, is how we perceive the things that have influenced us and shaped us to who we are today. There's always something good to come out of it, whether that be you finding your love for lifting heavy things from working construction, to you getting very, very involved and immersed in the sports world from working journalism. I think there's so much value with that. And obviously there's so many other benefits as well, from you learning how to write at such a high level with, the journalism classes and that sort of thing. You're very professional in how you put yourself together in that regard. And that's something I struggle with that a bit myself at times. And I think it's really awesome how you took opportunities that others didn't even think were an opportunity and turned them into something valuable. You mentioned about the write-up that you had with the New York Giants in particular. And I think it's amazing how you can kind of sit there on the outside looking in and offer, almost like a consultation advice to the general public of like, hey, here's things I noticed about X, Y, and Z. And it's amazing how all of that kind of shaped together and molded together to get you to where you are today. And I think that's something a lot of people struggle with or forget, is all these little things that you're going through on the day to day somehow play together for, whatever your bigger purpose is or whatever your bigger mission is. It all works together to help get you there.
Yeah, and I think it all works together. That's something I've actually been thinking about a lot, because of what I have to do in men's health, right? Because there is like a lot of the fun stuff I get to do. Like, I make a lot of fitness video, write a lot of stories, but there's another aspect to, the media job or any media job where it's like, you have to analyze the numbers, right? And I think it all kind of, and it's weird because as I was sitting here telling you about how I didn't like to analyze the numbers, um, when they had to do with, debits and credits on the balance sheet for accounting, right? Um, you know, all half of what I do when I'm building any workout for any of my clients is I analyze their numbers and the way they move and see where they're going from there, right? And so I think all the things kind of came together, right? All the different pieces, as disparate as they may seem, kind of came together to make me who I am today and get me here. Um, and I think it always comes together, like as long as we kind of we don't kind of we don't I think we just don't want to lose like our passions, right? um because they you know if we give up on them, then we don't get that opportunity for it to all come together. But if we kind of let them, whatever that passion is, whether it's like singing or going to the gym or acting or whatever, right? um we won't always be able to indulge it to its fullest because we have to work and we have to earn money, right? But if we kind of don't really quit on it, um and we kind of like let it, like if we don't give up on it, then there's always kind of a chance that it can manifest into something that we actually want, which sounds a little bit like a fortune cookie or like a Disney movie. But at the same time, I do think we just don't want to give up on the things that really really bring us joy.
Yeah, definitely. And taking that a step further and kind of taking that life analogy back to fitness, you can get wherever you want in fitness. Like if you want to be a competitive bodybuilder, it might take you some time, but you can get there. If you want to compete in powerlifting and, lift, hundreds and hundreds of pounds on squat, deadlift, and bench, you can do that. You can get there. Same thing with like strongman competition, a CrossFit, or, running a marathon. Like you can find a way to get there. But maybe your training wasn't always perfect as you're trying to get there. So the training, maybe it's suboptimal. Maybe it's not, what is actually going to get you closer to that point. I've made a lot of mistakes with my own training. And in life, maybe the job or occupation or situation you find yourself in is not the optimal way to do it, but that doesn't mean it's not going to provide benefit or value, right? Push-ups might not be the best exercise to get you stronger for powerlifting, but that's not to say there's not valuable value in training GPP and calisthenics. So kind of, as you mentioned, kind of reframing the way we look at things instead of looking at things as, hey, this isn't the best or this isn't what I wanted. It's more of this is all going to work together for the greater good.
Yeah, it's interesting too because I think one of the things you also learn in the gym, right, is how some of those advanced moves that you'll see people do where it's like wow, right? Um it was they got there because either themselves or their trainer was able to take that advanced move and break it down into smaller pieces, right? That they could then master those smaller pieces. That way they could learn the more advanced move. I'll give you kind of a silly example I've been having. So I go to a gym called Madison Avenue Strength Lab right now up in Larchmont. And I'm very good friends with one of the trainers there, Mike Marone, and he likes to do this thing. It's a pretty crazy lift, right? Where you basically put a loaded barbell in like the crooks of your elbows. So you're holding it like you can't see the picture, but you're holding it in the crooks of your elbows, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to stand up. So you get into like a deadlift position. Um, and you've got to stand up with that load, right? Um, and that is not a lift that anybody needs to do, right? There's video on my Instagram if you want to see it. But that is not a lift that anybody needs to do, right? Um, and I think he and I were going back and forth for a couple weeks on it. And it's not something I do in my training, right? But I also knew completely that I was capable of it, right? And it's because like I could break it down into three other exercises that I did all the time, right? And those 3 exercises prepared me to do that lift. So I was able to, I think I got like 225 or something, right? Um, and so I think it's kind of like, if you look at kind of like the course of my life and the course of your life and many others, right? It's like, if we the ultimate goal that we may want, or that we may, or the ultimate situation we may land in, right? We may not know if we're capable of it, or we may not think we can get there, but the component parts of our life, there are little pieces that we can learn in every single endeavor or opportunity that are going to carry over, right? So I think our goal, or kind of like a really good life goal, is any situation that we're in that has a little bit of adversity to it, or that even places us in a situation where we get to learn from somebody, right? Is to pick out like at least one thing that we can walk away from that discussion or that situation or that challenge from, right? You pick out at least one thing that you can kind of use to like augment like the processes that you use in everyday life, right? Maybe it's how to, deal with controversy better, right? Or maybe it's like a way you can communicate with people better from a certain situation, right? Or maybe it's, how you can be better with your money, or how you can make your money go farther to get you to your goal, right? I think our goal is like, anytime we have a challenge, take one lesson from that and apply that lesson to every single other decision and everything that's going to come afterwards.
And you never know who you might impact by doing that, or who you might influence. And as you share those challenges that you overcome with the rest of the world, you can stop and look back and see the impact that you've had on everyone else. Again, going with the superhero analogy, how many people in the movies get inspired or motivated to do things because of their favorite superhero, or how many of them want their superhero's autograph. And now applying that to you, Eb, I mean, how many hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands of people have you directly impacted on their fitness and health journey because of the things that you do and the things that you share day after day? It's amazing to have that kind of impact on the world.
Yeah, and it's crazy because we're all going to have that. We all get a chance to have that impact, especially now in the era of social media, right? Like anybody can have like an Instagram, or like a TikTok, right? And one thing I always tell young trainers who get, they're like, how do I get like, how do I get to like 300,000 followers, or how do I get to 1 million followers, right? And the one thing I tell them is, obviously it's really cool, and it's very easy for me to say because I have a bunch of followers, right? Um, but the one thing, and it's actually a good lesson that I got a couple years ago, because I think there was a point where my Instagram was stagnating a little bit. And so I was talking to a social media editor friend, and I think I mentioned that, and she's like, "But you already have all these followers already, so why don't you just try to make a really good impact on that, right?" And whether you have 300,000 followers or 3,000 or 30, right? You can have some sort of impact on the way they move, how much they love movement or don't love it, right? And you can help them move better and feel better about themselves and feel better physically, if you're just using that platform, right? You don't need 300,000 followers to do it. It helps. But you can do it for the 300 people, and 300 lives impacted is actually a lot of different lives when you think about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's the kind of thing. It's like, picture 300 people in a room. Like
Right.
that's a full college classroom. And it's like, the number might look small on Instagram, but in reality, it's a lot of people. It's very impactful. I feel like I got to ask you, Eb. We've talked about superheroes and used the superhero analogy several times here. Who's your favorite superhero? Are you more of like a Marvel or DC guy? Do you like Batman or Iron Man? Where do you kind of rank
Uh,
here?
the Marvel DC thing is kind of loaded, so we're not going to go there. Uh, but no, I'm a big fan of two superheroes, and I think it's and one from Marvel, one from DC, and I think it's because of the impact they have. And it's weird, in a very childish and silly sort of way. It's also, possibly may have contributed to why I'm a journalist, right? So you can see where I'm going with that. But Superman, right? Was something, because again, like where I grew up, I think I was one of two minority kids in my graduating class from high school, right? So I've always appreciated Superman a lot as kind of like, that outsider, um who accomplishes some really really cool stuff with his life, only like saves the world 8 billion times, right? So I think Superman is somebody who I've always been a very big fan of. And also because he's a little bit of a nerd when he's got the glasses on, and that's kind of how I am when I'm not lifting heavy things. To be honest, that's how I am when I am lifting heavy things too. The other one I'm a very big fan of is Captain America. In specific, I really like kind of the Chris Evans Disney Marvel version of him, and I think it's just a really good just everything about what he stands for and is kind of like I think what we or what I definitely try to aspire to be like in the workplace, and again also as kind of like hopefully a force for good in fitness. I like to think of it or say for myself that I'm trying to be like the Captain America of fitness, you know, like make like the good decisions, be somebody that people can trust, you know, and do it in kind of like an ethical, noble way. So those would be my two favorites. And I got a soft spot for Spider-Man too, because you can't not love Spider-Man.
No, for sure. I like those answers, and I like kind of the meaning and impact that you have behind them there. That's really deep and insightful, and very focused on kind of reflecting on my own past as well. And, you know, similar to you, I kind of grew up in the middle of nowhere, PA, and unfortunately, I couldn't do a pull-up, which when, you know, you're surrounded by guys in gym class that can all do pull-ups, and you're the only one who can't do it at the, you know, the fitness testing, it kind of hits a little different. And like you, I kind of dedicated myself to a little bit of a fitness journey. And the next year I did 8 or 10 or however many it was, and then just kind of kept it going from there. So it's interesting to kind of look back at where you come from and where you are today and kind of see the evolution of the journey, and, you know, giving thanks to all of those that had an impact on you, positively, negatively, or otherwise. And sometimes that's people, and sometimes that's, you know, fictional characters that way. But it's awesome how it all kind of works together for the greater good at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's funny because I'll bring up two things just kind of off that. They're a little bit fitness based, but so I've had two serious injuries in my career, right?
Mhm.
I feel like everybody gets them a little bit. But you know, it's like again, it's the same thing. It's like what do you do with it and how does it impact you, right? So I tore my ACL in undergrad. Never played basketball, by the way. Oh, I tore my ACL at Syracuse, and you should never play basketball with people who like don't play basketball. You know, um, like because all they do is ram into your knee. But I remember that was horrible, right? And I was not really sure what to do. But I wound up learning one a lot about the knee joint from that, and two, that's actually how partly because I was having a rough time dealing with that. That's how I started talking to my wife, right? At Syracuse. So, you know, a good thing came from it, right? And then the other thing is I tore my left labrum doing too many muscle ups during my CrossFit era stage. Um, but I remember like being very, very down about that. And it was probably the first serious injury I'd had that was kind of self-inflicted, right? Um, and I remember, you know, once I kind of got over the fact that it was torn and I was going to have surgery and not going to be able to train for like 3 to 4 months, I wound up studying the shoulder really well. Understanding, you know, the rotator cuffs, internal, external rotation, like a lot of different principles that I wouldn't have dove into if not for that injury. And I think that's helped a lot in terms of how I can think about the shoulder for general population, and also how I train it for myself. And so again, a lot of good came from it. So yeah, any situation, we can pull something from. So, yeah.
I completely agree. And I love the kind of tie in with injuries there, because as a PT, I see a lot of those every day, as you can imagine. And in particular, we're very biased towards the ACL at the clinic I'm at. And it's one of those things that it just downright sucks, for lack of a better way to put it. And people are usually pretty devastated when it first happens. Maybe they get online and they read some of the statistics and they see, you know, some scary things out there. But for those who put in the work and dedicate themselves to the process, they tell me when they're on the other side that it is one of the best things to ever happen to them, which seems weird to me as someone who's never gone through it. But trying to put myself in their shoes, you know, you go from a point where you can't even walk and everything kind of hurts to walking again, to getting stronger, to running again, jumping again, lifting again, all these different things. And I definitely think that there's power and impact that can be had in kind of losing your locus of control and then regaining it over the course of a very dedicated, hard work required 9 to 12 month period that way. So I completely echo that point, and I certainly think that injuries can play into who you are for the better if you choose to look at them that way. By the same token, if you get injured and you decide, you know what, this is going to define me, I'm done, I'm tapped out, this is all I've got, then you're probably not going to get back to where you were before, where you want to be. Same thing in fitness, as we've talked about for the entire episode. You have to be willing to put in the time, put in the effort, put in the energy, and commit yourself to the process. And yeah, it might not look the same every day. There might be some ups and some downs, but if you trust that process and you give it all you've got, then you will come out a better person, better athlete, and stronger from it.
Yeah, the shoulder injury in particular, honestly, like I kind of, because the ACL is some guy crashed into me. I can't do anything about that, right?
Right.
That's his fault. I will never speak to him again. Um, but the shoulder was very much self-inflicted. Poor training. I was like, I came up and I thought I was bulletproof, right? And so I remember, and then I went down. It's kind of what you were describing, where you look up things on the internet, and very quickly you go down this rabbit hole of despair. Because if you hang out on Reddit long enough, you'll read, 80 people who will tell you that like the torn shoulder labrum injury you're going through, right, is something you can't really come back from. And it's the death knell for your fitness, right? In reality, one, I think this is a credit to people like you, like physical therapists who put in the time and work very closely with people. um like our physical therapy processes and the human body is amazing overall, and so you can come back, right? I think most people don't see their rehabs through, and that's why that falls apart. But I remember going in and being very, very scared because, I had read a lot about CrossFitters saying how they could never do, snatches and muscle ups again, right? And I can do all those things because I think what I did is I committed to the process of the rehab, every day, twice a day. And that's what I tell people too when they are going through an injury. If they go to a PT, I say do the drills that your PT tells you to do every day, twice a day, because 9 times out of 10 they're small muscle groups, as opposed to heavy lifts that require a lot of recovery. So the more you apply yourself to it, the better. So I think, yeah, it's all the same stuff, right? It's like when you're met with a challenge, the more effectively you can face that challenge head on and not shrink from it, the better you will be for it long term.
Definitely. And going that extra mile and giving a little bit more to that process certainly paid dividends for you. And as we mentioned earlier, now you can turn around and help others realize the impact that has on their own lives. Eb, I feel like we covered a lot of ground today, talking about so many different points from your personal life and how that impacts fitness, career, and overall lifestyle. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts or closing remarks or anything we missed today?
No, to be honest, I feel like this was an amazing conversation. I'm glad we were able to finally have it again after a couple of false starts. So that's like another little lesson in persistence from the two of us to everybody else, right? I think the only other thing I'd like to just mention is the strength and diversity program, which is something I'm super proud of that we've been doing at Men's Health and Women's Health.
Right.
And it is kind of a program that I think is a little bit after my own heart, and for the trainer in me who might have gotten into it earlier in Pennsylvania if I knew it could be a career, right? So it is for kind of trainers from all marginalized communities. And the goal of that program is to basically help, trainers who, need a leg up, right? We're going to give them, like, we're going to work with them to use the men's health platform more and women's health platform. Going to get the mentorship, help get them certified, teach them how to make content. So anybody who is interested in that, if they want to apply for it, just go over to, I think, menshealth.com/strength and diversity. And yeah, but we're always taking some notes for that. And it's something like I would love to see grow. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing. And you said that kicks off in January 24.
January 23rd. So we actually have a pretty big event January 23rd for it. But the program and kind of the education that we're trying to or the education and the tools we're trying to give trainers is a year-round process. So we'll be selecting our next class for that in February.
That's amazing. I love the focus on giving back and bettering the next generation. Eb, for people who want to find out more about you or check you out on Instagram, where can they find you at?
My Instagram is at Ebenezer Samuel, so my full name 23. That's where I'm at.
Awesome. We'll link to that in the description. Eb, really appreciate your time. Really appreciate the conversation and everything that you're doing for the fitness world and all of the amazing people that you're impacting on the day-to-day basis. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Brawn Body Health and Fitness Podcast. If you liked this episode, please make sure to share it with a friend, subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes, and leave a review. This way we can spread knowledge and motivation and help reach more people. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next time.